The following program is made possible by the friends and partners of Creation Today. Welcome to the Creation Today show, where we bring together interviews with experts and solid Bible teaching. Your co-hosts, Eric Hovand and Paul Taylor, affirm the ultimate authority of God's Word, the truth of creation, and why it matters to you.
We've got lots of evidence that man and dinosaurs have always lived together.
We love dinosaurs. So we're interpreting the evidence starting from our presupposition that the Bible is true.
Yes. Welcome to the Creation Today show. We are so thankful that you guys are joining us. Today, as you can tell, we're talking about the subject of dinosaurs. And whether you're joining us on one of the television stations that airs us around the country and around the world or online, we are so glad that you're here to learn today with Paul and I about dinosaurs.
We love dinosaurs.
We do. Now, you in the last show told me that you were the kid that grew up loving dinosaurs way more than I did. You would memorize their names and stuff.
Absolutely. I knew the names of dinosaurs, and of course a lot of things have changed since then. We commented about the fact there isn't a brontosaurus, which is one of my favorites. But you know, I was absolutely fascinated by dinosaurs, and I think kids are, and you know, we're going to be talking about the influence of the media on dinosaurs, or rather dinosaurs in the media during this show.
Since we're going to talk about that, I pulled up facts about dinosaurs. The very first web link that comes up, let me read you some facts that they say about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs ruled the earth over 160 million years. From the Triassic period, around 230 million years ago, through the Jurassic period until the end of the Cretaceous, around 65 million years ago. Paul, that's just one of several facts teaching kids dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. And you go get any book on dinosaurs, get any kid's book from a secular perspective, that is the first thing that is drilled into their heads, is dinosaurs lived millions of years ago.
And of course there isn't any evidence for that. In fact,
No.
we show lots and lots of evidence to the contrary, but because they've inculcated young people with that idea straight away.
They've done what to young people?
Inculcated and indoctrinated them with these ideas.
Okay, that is a word?
Yes,
okay,
at least
just checking.
And
I didn't know that was a word.
Young
Sorry.
people now immediately start from that point of view that dinosaurs lived millions and millions of years ago. That is what proves the Bible to be wrong.
I teach in schools, and I'll tell kids, and I'll go through this whole long spiel on dinosaurs, and then at the end, because I don't preface it, at the end I say, so, did dinosaurs live millions of years ago? And I'll still have some kids, just because they've been indoctrinated, yes! And I'm going, no, we just covered all the evidence that shows they've always lived with man and haven't lived millions of years ago. No, they didn't live millions of years ago.
I mean, we could talk about artifacts that can be found from around the world. In last week's show, we looked, for example, at a model dragon. Clearly looked very similar to a raptor, somewhat like Fred here. That Dave Wetzel had this model, and he talked about that and how it seemed to be very, very similar to a raptor. But there's loads. We talked about Dave Wetzel's book and Van Nelson's book last week, and we talked about, which are all available at creationstore.org.
Yeah, and they have artifact after artifact after artifact and find after find after find of dinosaurs with people living together. And that's not all. There are more than that.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, you can find petroglyphs.
Yes, those are fascinating because these are literally drawings that have been done on cliff walls and things like that from the ancient Indians that depict dinosaurs. Matter of fact, it was Dennis Swift that did a lot of research on the, where's that one petroglyph at? You remember?
It's in the Natural Bridges National Park in Utah. And yes, our friend Dennis Swift has got some pictures of that. And the actual picture just showing the drawing is very difficult to see. It's not terribly good television to show this picture because it's very faint, but you'll have to sort of stare at it a little bit, get right up to the TV screen, close to the TV screen, feel the sincerity.
Oh, I thought you were going to try to scare him. Really close.
But if you look very, very carefully, it does look a little bit like a dinosaur. But the second picture that we have of Dennis is, actually Dennis appears on this, and you can see him tracing around the picture, so you get a better idea that this is very much like a dinosaur.
We were after Dennis for years to actually put a book together about all these findings, and it really is fascinating. He finally did it. It's called Secrets of the Ica Stone and Nazca Lines, and actually in 2012, I went over with with Dennis to Peru, and we saw the ichthyostones, we saw the Nazca lines. In the Nazca lines, they have all kinds of pictures and things like that of these different animals. One of the animals portrayed there is a Stegosaurus type animal.
Yes.
No, excuse me, Stegosaurus type of animal. Fascinating. And a Triceratops. Also in the book, he goes over to a temple in Cambodia, and in that temple that is around 1,200 years old, there is a carving of a Stegosaurus right inside that temple in Cambodia.
In the Angkor Wat temple. Yes.
Fascinating stuff. So, yet again, more and more information that dinosaurs have always lived with man. Dennis is has done a lot of research in pre-Incan artifacts and has lots of textiles, the original textiles that are hundreds of years old, that show carvings of dragons.
Yes, when my son and I were staying with Dennis, he spent a lot of time showing us these things. And I know some people have said this is controversial, that maybe some of these stones are fakes, you know, that you might go there and they always seem to be able to sell you one. You know, to me, it really doesn't matter that much, because even if they were, the ideas had to have come from somewhere.
Yeah. Obviously. And I'd say the ichthyostones, which we understand are controversial, the ichthyostones are just one out of 100 different pieces of evidences that show people and dinosaurs have always lived together.
Yes, remember, we don't prove things from the evidences, but the point is that if we start from Scripture, that we know that God made dinosaurs on the 6th day, then these are the sort of things that we expect to see. So we're interpreting the evidence starting from our presupposition that the Bible is true.
All right, I want to run a clip that you and I looked at before the show, and it's just a few seconds long here. I want to run a clip, and then I want to talk about it for a second, and then we got to take a break, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about this. I'm sure you will recognize where this clip comes from, but before you watch it, here's what I want you to think of. What is actual knowledge, real knowledge, that is being talked about in this clip?
Yes.
All right, check this out.
He moves like a bird, and you keep still because you think that maybe his visual acuity is based on movement, like T-Rex, and he'll lose you if you don't move. But no, not Velociraptor. You stare at him, and he just stares right back. And that's when the attack comes, not from the front, but from the side. From the other two raptors, you didn't even know were there. Because Velociraptor's a pack hunter, you see. He uses coordinated attack patterns, and he slashes at you with this. 6-inch retractable claw, like a razor, on the middle toe. He doesn't bother to bite your jugular like a lion, say. No. He slashes at you here, or maybe across the belly, spilling your intestines. The point is, you are alive when they start to eat you. Try to show a little respect.
Certainly a film that was used to really, use dinosaurs to promote the idea of evolution on a large scale.
Absolutely. Actually, one of my favorite bits is where you see the Brachiosaurus browsing on the tops of trees.
Yes.
I mean, there's some lovely imagery in the film.
And now they've got it in 3D. You can watch Jurassic Park in 3D. It is pretty impressive, I got to tell you.
Very impressive.
So the dinosaurs there, he's talking about the Velociraptor and how, man, they know all this stuff, and here's what he would do to you. And he goes on to really scare this kid into respecting these Velociraptors.
It's a fascinating clip, you know, and we can't show you the whole clip for copyright reasons, but, you know, what did Dr. Grant have to say on that? How much science was there in what he said? I know it's a fictional story, but even so, that bit has been inserted because we're supposed to assume that this is a scientist, the character is a scientist, giving out science.
Like, he knows this information. He's got it. It's all real knowledge.
Exactly. And, you know, Michael Crichton, who wrote these books, has a lot to say on the subject of science elsewhere in other books he's got to say about what's science fact and science fiction. I think there's a lot we need to talk about on this particular clip.
Yeah, what do they really know about the dinosaurs? Let's talk about that right after this.
Can Christians believe the Bible from the very first word? This new study, The 6 Days of Genesis by creation speaker Paul Taylor, will help Christians understand exactly what happened during the creation week and why it is foundationally important to believe it. You will enjoy every minute of Paul's unique presentation style, combining scientific facts, solid biblical teaching, and a little British humor. For more information, visit us at www.creationtoday.org.
To order this book, visit us at creationstore.org.
Welcome back. You're watching the Creation Today show with me, Paul Taylor, and with Eric Hoven. We saw a fascinating clip from Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, a great movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. The imagination and the visual imagery for the first time in movie theaters of all these dinosaurs, and that was fascinating to me. I really enjoyed it.
But Michael Crichton in his novels always claimed to be putting actual science in to back up the fiction, which is obviously a fictional story. And, you know, he does that in other books. This part, these things in that clip are what he claims is the real science. That's why he's got a scientific character, and that scientist is putting forward to this very irritating little boy, it has to be said, some real science.
So let's back up just a minute and ask ourselves the questions. What real science was in there? What did he really know? What is he going off of? What, Paul, can we really know about these dinosaurs?
Well, just before the bit that we saw is the actual bit of real science where he shows a picture of the fossil. And even that would not have been as it was dug up, because we talked last week about the fact that the fossils were actually smashed to pieces, so you wouldn't have found the whole thing.
You don't see the whole skeleton nice and neat in the ground like it really comes out.
No,
like
and he was showing what was purporting to be a photograph of a fossil complete, which doesn't happen. But that having said, we're fairly sure of what the thing looked like. That's it. It's about 3 seconds.
That was the real science. So what it smelled, what it ate, what it looked like for real, whether it had spots or feathers, or how it hunted, how it looked and stared back at you.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's have a look at this photo here of taken from Jurassic Park of a raptor. And what you'll see is, remember the description of the raptors, they were problem-solving dinosaurs, weren't they? I need one of those in my office. A problem-solving dinosaur. And you can see in the picture that that's an intelligent creature. There's something about that picture that says, this is intelligent. What's special about it that tells us that?
I think it's its eyes. And when I look at it, I think, man, those eyes look like it's thinking, like it really knows, and it's you know.
And this, of course, is what Dr. Grant was trying to put across in this clip. But where are its eyes in the fossil?
Yeah, we don't have any fossil eyes.
I mean, there seems to be 4 things that Dr. Grant was saying in the clip. Raptors stare at their prey.
How does he know that?
Exactly. How does he know that?
So that's made up.
Then he compares it with Tyrannosauruses, you know, that Tyrannosaurus will stare at the prey, but the difference is that raptors are pack hunters, so they come and attack you from the side.
That's made up.
Amazing, isn't it? How you can find that out from the fossils. They slash you with a retractable claw. Well,
they do have sharp claws, I'll give them that.
And it is possible that the claw was retractable. I'm not going to argue that point, but what they actually used those for, did they use them for slashing open people's stomachs?
So that they could eat their guts while they're still alive?
Because that's the 4th thing. How do they know that this thing ate you while it was still alive, while you were still alive?
It's just interesting to look at this and see how much conjecture goes into what they're trying to claim as science.
It's incredible, isn't it?
And this is the problem that I see. Regularly, they are erasing the line between science and fiction and making their fiction as if it's part of the science. And it's not. They don't separate that. So in kids' minds, as kids are learning about dinosaurs, they just simply learn, oh, okay, that's true. We know this about that dinosaur. We know this about this dinosaur. When in reality, they don't.
Yes, and don't think, you see, that's just in a fictional film, is it? We've been to a number of museums, and you see the same thing. We went to the Children's Museum in Indianapolis. We went to the Natural History Museum in the Smithsonian in DC. I've been to the London's Natural History Museum. It's fascinating. There's a wonderful display in London's Natural History Museum where you've got a big picture. And in this picture, which you can see on the screen, there's a Tenontosaurus, which is said to be a herbivorous creature in the center, and it's being attacked by a number of small carnivorous dinosaurs, Deinonychus. What's the evidence that they use to say that that these creatures would hunt like a pack? Simply that they happen to find 1 fossil Tenontosaurus with 3 fossil Deinonychuses close by. So
which
obviously,
is evidence.
Of course it is, because these Deinonychuses were hunting the Tenontosaurus and suddenly all fell over dead.
Yes.
And got fossilized.
And got buried and got fossilized.
Amazing.
the imagery and the imagination that goes into dinosaurs really is quite amazing. There's been history documentaries on Discovery Channel and things like that, where they actually try to go in and they have these animators create these animals and imagine what they look like, and it's all fantasy, though.
It is.
It's all imagination. Here's what I find interesting. Whether you're looking facts up online or, for example, watching one of the PBS specials like Dinosaur Train, one of the PBS, I guess I shouldn't say specials, but one of the cartoons there to entertain the kids, Dinosaur Train. Scott the paleontologist will come on and he always says, hey, here's this animal. He lived in this place and he lived during the Cretaceous period, or he lived during the early Jurassic period, or he lived in a... And they're using these names, and then they get the kids to understand these names and understand, look, the Jurassic period is this time frame. So they're teaching the kids the millions of years using the time periods.
Yes.
A lot of times.
Yeah, and you know, they paint the scene. You've got the dinosaurs, and you've got the fern-like plants that they would have been living, the gymnosperm plants that they would have been living in. So they paint this scene and say that's a particular era in history, as if the whole Earth would have looked the same. But even today, of course, different parts of the Earth do not look the same. And it makes far more sense to us to suppose that these layers, where you've got particular types of fossils together, do not represent time periods, but represent environmental conditions. That's what it was like in one region, where the dinosaurs happened to live, among the gymnosperm forests.
Yes. So the whole idea of them being buried in a location that looks similar is not necessarily from millions of years ago. It could just be that geographic location.
Yes, so I'm quite happy with the pictures that they paint, showing the gymnosperm forests and the dinosaurs walking through them. It's just that that's simply a region of the pre-flood world, not a particular time period.
Okay, so we see dinosaurs in modern media being used to teach the idea of millions of years. We see them in children's books being used to teach the idea of millions of years. Yet we've got lots of evidence that man and dinosaurs have always lived together, don't we? We
have a huge amount of evidence from artifacts all over the world.
So really what's going on is there's a lot of propaganda being
It is propaganda, and you get this in children's books particularly. We've shown this many times. Books that are dedicated to very small children, to try and reel them in, trying to explain to them that evolution is true.
And this is where I think it gets really ironic, because evolutionists and atheists would say, no, creationists, you guys are the one. Paul, you're the one indoctrinating your children. And you're the one that is abusing children by telling them dinosaurs lived with man.
Actually, what we're doing is simply teaching them critical thinking. Because unlike the evolutionists, we actually tell our young people about the other views on the matter, so they can criticize them, so they can understand them. If you look in a typical children's book, which is a creationist children's book, it will mention evolution, and it will explain to children about it, so they can understand it, they can criticize it
so they can know it's not true.
Exactly.
It's just interesting. The evolutionists, they say, look, we love science, but just don't apply it to evolution, because we don't want to think critically about evolution.
I can give you an anecdote about that from my teaching career, because you must remember that I used to be a school teacher in public schools, and I think it might be worth talking about that. The very first time that I taught a class about the theory of evolution. Let's find out a little bit more about that after this break.
Oh, gonna make us wait. At 21 years old, I was a self-professed Christian, but I didn't know God. I had been raised in church and in a Christian home and Christian school and enrolled in a Christian college. I was around church and religion literally all my life. So why didn't I know God? Growing up in a Christian home, I got really good at pretending to be a Christian. I didn't really have a desire for righteousness. Instead, the only thing I pursued was trying to make everybody think that I was a good person and give the perception that I had Christ as my Savior. I just wanted to look good among my friends. Welcome back. You guys are watching the Creation Today show with Paul Taylor and Eric Hovind. That was me. Paul Taylor is you. And Paul, we're talking about dinosaurs here today. Let me read something to you. This is from the Scientific Facts About Dinosaurs.
Well, it must be true then.
Of course it's true.
Is it on a website?
It's on a website.
So that must make it true.
has to be true because everything you read online is true.
It's absolutely true.
Here's what it says. Birds descended from a type of dinosaur known as theropods.
They did indeed.
Did they indeed?
Well, that's what they tell us.
That's what they say. They say birds evolved from dinosaurs. So
Theropod dinosaurs.
Thera or Terra?
Terra.
Terra? That's my cousin's
and it's spelled TH, but it's Terra. But theropod dinosaurs, just so that you know what we're talking about, it's a family of dinosaurs, probably a created kind of dinosaurs, a barramin of dinosaurs, and it would have included Fred here, Fred the raptor.
Yes.
And it would also have included Tyrannosaurus rex.
Got one of him right up there.
And it would also have included Megalosaur, Allosaur, that sort of creature.
Do you remember seeing in the news when they reported that the chicken is a cousin of the Tyrannosaurus rex? Well, they came out and said chickens descended from T-Rex.
That's what they tell us.
Yeah.
By the way, have you got time after we film this show to go and get an Allosaurus filet from...
An Allosaurus filet. Nice.
Well, the point is that it doesn't make a lot of sense. They tell us more about that. For example, they know that dinosaurs have 2 different types of hips. So there are some dinosaurs that have bird hips that look exactly like birds, and they have some dinosaurs that have hips looking exactly like lizards. So
all right, hold it. Kids. All right. So they have some dinosaurs that have bird hips, some dinosaurs have lizard hips. Now, if you were an evolutionist and you were making up the story that birds evolved from dinosaurs, which ones would you have evolved from dinosaurs? Would it be the bird-shaped hip ones or the lizard-shaped hip ones? What do you think? Bird-shaped is what you would think, right, Paul? Okay, tell us about it.
Except that our friend here, the theropod, the raptor, he has lizard-shaped hips.
So they say, the evolutionists made up the story that birds evolved from lizard-hipped dinosaurs.
That's right.
Pteropods.
Incredible,
Even though I'm
isn't
going to say theropod. You say tomato, I say tomato. Okay, how about this one? Despite being long extinct, dinosaurs are frequently featured in media and portrayed, and this is obviously what goes on. And it talks about Jurassic Park here. This is one of the scientific facts. Pterodactyls are not dinosaurs, it says. It says that the first dinosaur to be formally named was Megalosaurus. So it's got some real scientific facts in here.
Yes. It's a moot point, really, whether you'd class pterodactyl as a dinosaur. I mean, it was not a land creature. Therefore, in our classification, I suppose I'd agree to that extent. Dinosaurs being land animals would have been made on day 6. Pterodactyls, though, we're pretty certain would be flying creatures. Therefore, they would have been made on day 5 of creation. So I suppose we can agree with them to a certain extent, though we tend to lump them together because of the sort of similarities of where they're found and what they're doing. Pterodactyls are fascinating creatures.
Yeah, no kidding.
And, you know, when you hear legends about dragons, which we talked about in our previous show, because some dragons fly. And particularly many of the smaller flying dragons seem to sound very much like pterodactyls.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I used to live in Wales for quite a long time, and it's fascinating that there's a lot of stories of flying reptiles in Wales. For example, in 1903, a lady called Marie Trevelyan, wrote a book which contained a lot of what she called folklore of Wales, folklore of dragons in Wales. And one of the things that she talked about was flying serpents flying around Penllyn Castle in Glamorgan. She says this: the woods around Penllyn Castle, Glamorgan, had the reputation of being frequented by winged serpents, and these were the terror of old and young alike. An aged inhabitant of Penllyn, who died a few years ago, said that in his boyhood the winged serpents were described as very beautiful. They were coiled when in repose and looked as if they were covered with jewels of all sorts. Some of them had crests sparkling with all the colours of the rainbow. When disturbed, they glided swiftly, sparkling all over, to their hiding places. Now, if they were scaly creatures, they would have sparkled. But it makes me think of 2 things here. First of all, it makes me think of pterodactyls. They sound like pterodactyls,
flying,
scales,
right,
and so on and so on. But secondly, it makes me think about a creature in the Bible, the seraph, which is translated as the fiery flying serpent.
Yeah. It's talked about in Isaiah.
Isaiah, 2 places in Isaiah, and particularly Isaiah chapter 30, verse 6, where we read, through a land of trouble and anguish from which came the lioness and the lion, the viper and the fiery flying serpent. Fascinating stuff.
It is. Now, dare we talk about the fact that there is some controversial information out there, and I'll admit it, it's controversial, of creatures that have a similar type of feature that some people say are still alive in Papua New Guinea. Should I bring that up on the show, or should we just not talk about that?
No, I think you shouldn't mention the flying creatures in Papua New Guinea
okay.
at all.
We'll talk about
some people
those
think they've seen flying creatures in Papua New Guinea.
We'll talk about that on another show then, about the creatures that they say glow at night and sparkle. In New Guinea.
Sounding very much like the description we've just had.
Sounds like that, but we won't mention that.
We won't mention that.
Because it's controversial.
It's controversial, and the last thing we want to do is bring controversy into the show.
Instead, let's talk about evolution. A non-controversial subject there.
Absolutely.
All right, dinosaurs have been used throughout time to say, or throughout the last couple hundred years, to say that, to try to teach kids that the Earth is millions and billions of years old. The way I look at it, Satan couldn't fool Adam in the Garden of Eden because he saw him, he named him. He's not going to fool Adam about the dinosaurs. He couldn't fool Noah about the dinosaurs. He fed him every day on the ark. The Bible says he took 2 of every land-dwelling animal on the ark. But then over the next few thousand years, as they became rare, and then in the early 1800s when they dug up the bones to some, I think Satan seized that opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to try to teach people that these things lived millions of years ago.
I think
that's what we see.
Because, of course, they started to fade from memory. And, you know, there's the marvelous book we have in the bookstore. We have a lot of books about dinosaurs in our bookstore.
That
Lots
don't
of
teach
very
evolution.
Good books that don't teach evolution. Good books to get. Here's one of the best, Dinosaurs for Kids by Ken Ham. He talks about the 7 F's of dinosaurs. The 7 F's being that they are formed.
Oh, good, you got
Then they were fearless. Then they were fallen. Then there was the flood. Where so many fossils formed. They faded from memory. They started being found a couple of hundred years ago. Today they're used in evolutionary fiction.
Fiction, nice. That is what they're
This
used
book,
for.
also by Ken Ham, D is for Dinosaur, goes back much further, for much younger children, for toddlers and so on who are not really able to read. A marvelous book on dinosaurs. For adults, you have a talk on dinosaurs in your beginning series, don't you?
I did a half-hour talk specifically about dinosaurs living with man, how we know dinosaurs have always been around with people. And so
I had a talk on dinosaurs as well in my Taylor Talk series, but I have to say the pictures are better on the on the beginning
the CDs,
series.
You don't quite get the picture.
And if you want to ask questions about dinosaurs or anything else, then you can do so. questions@creationtoday.org.
We want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with us each week on the Creation Today show. Next week, we've got a brand new topic. We'll see you then.
Do you need the tools to defend your faith? Visit our websites for up-to-date content. Attend one of our live events. And shop online at creationstore.org. We are Creation Today.